The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone, or happy early afternoon, depending on what time zone you are in. My name is Kirsty McPherson, and I'm the Marketing Director for Golden Shovel Agency. And today's webinar, we're going to be focusing on lead generation and inbound marketing. And presenting the information is Golden Shovel's Chief Operations Officer, Ron Krisha. So we're going to go ahead and get you started, and he'll go through the presentation, and as you have questions, feel free to just input into the chat and we can go through those at the end, and then there's also room for questions at the end as well. So with that, I would like to welcome everybody, and now I'll toss it over to Ron.
Thank you very much, Kirsty. Hope everyone's doing well, and thank you for joining. Today we're going to talk about lead generation and inbound marketing. I would imagine that everybody has heard these terms, and one of the things that I suspect is people are wondering, how does this apply to economic development versus B2B? And the reason I bring that up is because that's one of the most sought after questions that we get. So we're going to talk a little bit about lead generation and inbound marketing and how this can be helpful to economic developers who are trying to attract businesses, tourists, or workforce. This presentation will go about 20 minutes. I like to keep them pretty short and just give you one or two thoughts to take away with, and I'd love to answer your questions. At the tail end of this, we'll be sending out follow-ups to everyone, so I hope you can just sit back, and if you're doing something else, now would be a great time to just pick up your cup of coffee and give me 20 minutes and let's get rolling. The one thing that I want everyone to take away is inbound marketing and lead generation is not about raising awareness. It's about providing information to the prospect at their knowledge level and joining them on their journey. It is about building a relationship and trust, and relationships require nurturing and effort. And what I want to emphasize is relationships require effort. Think about all the relationships in your life, and in order to foster a friendship or maybe a spouse or even with family, it requires effort. It requires building that trust. That is what marketing is about these days, and that is what people are requiring in this day and age with social media on how they're going to engage with whether it's a sales process or so forth. Marketing's changed. It used to be you just do content and write ads and do billboards and throw it all out as a one-way thing, and we would just try to saturate the market with a megaphone. Those days have changed. It's about attracting people, and it's about attracting them in a way that says, hey, would you like to go on this journey with me? Would you like to move to our community? Would you like to set up a business? Would you like to be employed here? And when they take that first step, they're going to ask a question, or they're going to start to research, and meeting them on their level. So when we think about this, I call it transaction migration. But as you start to build relationships and make people comfortable with yours, you're going to see things like workforce attraction. If I'm comfortable, I've done enough research, I'm going to come to your community. Business attraction, I've done enough research, and you keep providing me with information, you keep addressing my questions, that's going to be a transaction migration. And then I have to use this one because I have 4 daughters and a son, and whenever we go on tourism, this is my picture of what tourists look like. It's me probably giving ice cream to my daughter. But again, same thing. As people are researching your area and they're thinking about where they're going to spend their time and dollars for tourism, how do we get them to have that knowledge and take that next step with us? The end result, people come, which I think is all of our goals, is how do we get, we build an attraction campaign so that people want to come and want to be part of the community that we have. And this is all very different with social media and with texting. One analogy I would say as you think about this is, in the world that we live in today, for example, I'll use myself as an example. I have 4 daughters. I have 3 of them at home yet. One's a 16-year-old and one's a 13-year-old, one's a 10-year-old. And when I text them, I have this expectation that you're going to text me back right away. And if you don't text me within 4 or 5 minutes, I start running through my head all the possible scenarios of why you're not texting me. And then, take this out of circle. When I text my friends or my colleagues, if they don't text me back within 5 minutes, then I start to run all through these scenarios of, oh, what happened? Did I say something wrong? And the reason I bring this up is because that type of back and forth is what we're seeing in the next generation of prospects and people. When they send out information, they want an immediate response because that's top of mind to them. So let's talk about attraction as a process. And I'm going to stop right here for just a second and see if there's any questions. And I don't see any questions being posted yet, so that's fine. So let's talk about attraction as a process. And I want you to really set aside the idea that we're marketing, because we're not just marketing, but we're attracting, and that's a big distinction. And so the first thing you have to do is you have to define for your community who you are. Why do you have value? Remember, when you get somebody's attention, it's a privilege anymore. It used to be, oh, we could just say, hey, I got 617 visitors to my website. But of those 617 visitors for a time-specific period, how many of them really are ready to engage? Or how many of them, if given one more piece of information, would take the next step? And so define who you are. Define why they want to build a relationship with you. And then know your audience. Who are you trying to attract? As logically crazy as it sounds, someone in the middle of the country certainly isn't going to build a seaport and go after those types of customers. But knowing your strengths and knowing what sets you apart is very, very critical, because if you're just saying the same thing that everybody else is saying, what's going to set you apart? What's going to engage that conversation? Why are you different for that relationship? And then use your community website as a hub. One of the biggest things that I think communities could improve on is not just to put your website out there and say, hey, look, it's out here, but to really use it as a dynamic, living, breathing document where it defines who you are. It is your value proposition. It is your vision statement. It is who you are. So, in an ideal world, if you walk down the main street of your community, the people that are the things that people say about your community or their community are reflected on that website. And then it becomes execution. Once you've defined who you are and your community, and once you've decided who the audience is that you would like to try to attract, then you execute. We're going to do SEO. We're going to do blogging. We're going to do social media, email marketing, PR campaigns, segmentation, all the things that we're going to do to execute. And this is the hard work. And then, of course, we have analyze. After we've executed, after we've put out these items, we're going to look at the results and say, okay, how did we do? All right. Prospects, research, and review. One of the things that people have to remember is that people are researching all the time. And so if they take that first step with your community and they say, oh, I've learned a little bit about you, now they want to know a little bit more, and you need to be there to provide them the information and not just leave them hanging. Go back to that analogy with the texting. If someone sends you a text, you know, how many of us, if we don't get a reply back, start to really go, oh, what just happened? Why didn't I get a reply? Same thing with your community. If someone inquires about you, you need to have a response process. If you put out a blog and they click on it, what happens? If you put out a success story and they click on it, what happens next? Because if the answer is, oh, nothing happens, they're going to translate into, well, do I really want to build a relationship with this organization? So a recommendation that I have, if you're going to do anything, ask yourself, what happens next? If we're going to put out a blog and somebody interacts with us or they visit our website and I use a tool like Lead Forensics or something else to track who's coming, how are you going to follow up? How are you going to send an email? How are you going to do a phone call? How are you going to put together a success story? Know that, because they're expecting that. And if they just go off into this cliff and they jump off the marketing cliff and they don't get any response, then they become somebody who just falls by the wayside that is a lost opportunity. A couple of processes that we have put together just so everyone can look at this. And yeah, these are complicated, I'll be honest. Today's world, marketing and attraction campaigns are very, very complicated because people come into your community through very many different doors. And so what we do is, one of our processes, we build out the marketing and PR. We can use virtual reality because we know video is a great attraction point. We can build out a trade show, and we can do an own media. And when I say we, I should take a step back. It's not just we as a company. This is what successful communities are doing when they build their inbound marketing strategies. Looking at your attraction campaign, you have 3 of them. Identifying the businesses and talents that will thrive, looking at empowering the economic development, and then building communication strategies. How are you going to, again, communicate when they inquire? And I know I'm probably sounding like a broken record, but it's that important. If somebody interacts with you through a digital means, how are you going to respond? Because that's really what the inbound marketing is about. It's about meeting people at their level of research and knowledge. So if I come in and I know just a little bit about your community and I ask that next 1 or 2 questions, I'm going to want to get a response and learn more, because as I learn more, that's where the trust and the commitment comes to build a relationship. One more thing here, we look at it as a layered, kind of an upside down, almost pyramid, but how are you going to use all of this information as you build out different types of strategies and attraction plans? Again, I'm going to come back to my one thing. Inbound marketing and lead generation is not about raising awareness. It's really about providing information to the prospect at their knowledge level and joining them on their journey. So the question is, how do you build that trust? How do I give you what you want so that you're going to want to spend more time with me? That's really what this is about, is how do I decide that I'm going to come into your community, or how do I decide that I want to build a business with you when I have so much to choose from? So that is 15 minutes. I promised a pretty quick turnaround today. And I want to see if there's any questions out there. We have a relatively small group today. I have 12 people on the webinar. So if you'd like to ask some questions, this is a good time. Otherwise, what we'll do is we'll follow up with some strategy documents, and we'll follow up with this presentation so that you can ask more questions. Because guess what? If you ask a question, we're going to respond with an answer, and we want to help you on your journey as well as you try to build your inbound marketing strategy. So any questions? And thank you for attending. Victor, any questions? Kirsty? Okay.
I'm not seeing any questions, Ron, but for the good of the group, can we just hold a quick discussion about some of the different tips and tricks and best practices? So when people think of lead generation, they think of certain tools. What are your favorite tools to use?
For lead generation?
Yes.
Well, certainly an email campaign is good, and a lot of people use those. HubSpot is another tool that is out there that we're employing as well with some of our clients. And the real crux of it, I think, is not necessarily the tool that you use, but does whatever tool you have the ability to do quick responses? and automated responses. So if I send an email into a community asking about their industrial parks, is the system going to identify that and send them back information right away and then alert me so that I know I can call that person and say, hey, I saw that you inquired about our industrial park. We sent you some information, and I'm just following up to see if you have more questions. So today's systems and tools should really automate about 80% of that for you, but also leave room for you to build a personal relationship. And I can't stress that enough. Being able to reach out in a phone call and say, hey, I saw that you interacted with our website means a lot to people. And I think that's a skill that we need to keep promoting.
So what are some of the information pieces that they should include when they're following up with a potential and a lead that just came in?
Success stories are big and with lots of information graphics. And so I would say one of the most important things that communities can do is build out their half a dozen or handful of success stories that they can share alongside of their demographics for their area, and have all that ready to go in a report format. I know one of the things that we do on our websites is we have a report builder that you can just select 4 or 5 pages plus the demographics and turn that right around. So if someone inquires about your community, all that's ready to go.
Perfect, thanks. I don't think I have any other questions.
I had one question that just came in, and that question was, how long is the process for creating this? And the process that we have found, and Kirsty, maybe you can help me out with this as well, it really varies, but I think it can be done in as little as 30 days and then go right into the execution phase. But I think the real important piece in that is not necessarily the time frame, but the passion and commitment to move something. A lot of times I'll see communities that'll say, hey, we want to do this, but what they really haven't thought about is who's the stakeholders they need to get together so they can build that strategy quickly. And these things can be done very, very quickly. You could put out a blogging or you could put out an email campaign and build a successful response inbound marketing process. The other thing I would offer is whatever you do it one step at a time. I think I see too many communities or too many people, for that matter, try to do everything at once. Build out an email campaign, build out a blogging, build out your LinkedIn campaign, build out your Facebook, and then measure it and respond and see how that works before you move on to the next layer and keep adding to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so I would also add that the setup is what's going to take the most time, and it's really important that you kind of get that going in the right fashion to begin with, because then it saves you a lot of time to have to go back through and redo everything in the first place. So I always encourage people to make sure that you have all of the items that you need to have up front before you start implementing any of these other practices, because ideally what's going to happen is after you have all this set up, it should be an automatic thing and it alerts and then automatically sends something out to your prospects. So that's the most time tedious component of it, is just getting all of your articles together and all of those really strong leads and various other components that you need to do to try to attract people. You really only, the other part about making sure that your lead generation is set up correctly is you only really have one shot at that handshake. So when someone comes into your website and notifies the system that they're interested, the information that they get back is going to be kind of a one-shot deal. So it needs to make sure that you're tailored to everything to make them want to continue to engage in that conversation. So that's probably the most tedious part of the entire thing.
Yeah, great advice. Okay, any other questions? Like I said, I had promised about 25 minutes. I see we're 2 minutes ahead of that schedule. I certainly don't want to take up a large part of people's day, but I just wanted to leave you with a kernel of knowledge when you think about your inbound marketing strategy. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. Thank everyone for attending, and we'll send a follow-up email and give the links out that people can get the slides, and if they have more information, we're happy to provide that. All right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Kirsty.
Perfect. Thank you all. I hope you have a great day.